You're listening to Luke Squared's Starting Lineup.
We on?
Yeah, good to go after 6 whole months.
It's been a while.
It has been a hot minute.
I missed this.
Yeah, it's been a long journey to get back here, I guess.
Well, life gets in the way sometimes, Luke, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So for anyone who was a follower of the podcast,
We know you're out there.
Kind of did, yeah.
We missed you too.
All 75 fans. But
This is season 1.
This is season 1. So
that was the pilot season.
We had the pilot season, our beta, if you will, and we're hoping to do a probably about an 8-episode season once a week before we move on to season 2.
Right.
Lucas and I were away on co-op for a little bit, and but we're back at it. And
we're back, and we love you.
Yeah, we live together. We've lived together for 2 months. It's taken us 2 months to record our first podcast in the new house.
We don't live together. We don't. We are not living together.
It's not even like there's one.
All right, let's just get into the sports. I think that's why people are listening. They don't care about our co-op, and they definitely don't care that we live together.
They just hope we flunk out of school.
Yeah, well, you're on your way there. All right, World Series tonight. Obviously, let's just get right at it.
Yeah, no, for sure. So we've had a good postseason so far, good competitive series and games. We're tied 3-3 in the World Series between the Houston Astros and the Washington Nationals. On the bump tonight for the Nationals, Max Scherzer, and for the Astros, we have Zach Greinke.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. This is like the epitome of what October baseball is all about. Like 2 pitchers who are absolute aces that are just going to be going head-to-head tonight. And you know what? Zach Greinke just came off a great showing, 1.96 ERA in their last game there against the Nationals. Who do you have tonight, though, Luke?
Well, first of all, I want to point out, I think this is the first time ever that 2 Cy Young winners have pitched against each other in Game 7 of the World Series.
Yeah, you're right.
Which, you know,
that's
if that's not baseball at its best, I don't know what is.
No, you're right.
I'm a big fan of the Astros. We could dive into, different players here and there, but basically, I like them the most because they have Greinke starting, obviously a good veteran pitcher, and Garrett Cole is available out of the bullpen, another starting pitcher, who is a stud, and they could turn to him. And then they have such a potent offense. We've seen them explode at different times, as we have with Washington. But I like Houston, especially having Houston back home. The visiting team has won every single game of this series, though, which will be interesting.
Do you think that trend will continue?
I hope not. It's the past of the past, and it's an independent event.
I'd love the Nationals to win.
But
I would love the Nationals to win. I'd love the Nationals to win. I love Max Scherzer. I love him. But the problem is, you know what, when you have or you're going up against a lineup of George Springer and Altuve, and literally you could go down and all 9 players in the depth chart are just absolute potential
threats. Like there's no other
absolute threats. Like, yeah. It's tough. Like, I think Max Scherzer is going to do well. He had a good outing last time, but also the vet, Zach Greinke, had an incredible 1.96 ERA in their last game, and he's been dominant all playoffs. So I don't know. It's going to be tough to tell. I'm excited to watch, but I'm gonna predict the Astros, but I'd love to see the Nationals get going.
Yeah, I can see that. It's also fun seeing a national team win the World Series, because in my opinion, it's a lot harder for a National League team to perform well and perform at their best because they have that added factor of their pitchers having to take at bats. Do
you think it's harder for the National League team to win when their pitchers
that doesn't
know?
Make any sense.
No, the pitchers know how to hit a little bit better. I think the American League is a little bit at a disadvantage.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point.
But how often is your pitcher actually getting up there and consistently getting on base? Like, I feel like the margin of error or the margin of difference
it's an automatic out or it's a sac bunt. But anyways, the point is the Nationals are used to playing at home and used to playing in a league where their pitcher has to take at bats. Now they get to manage their team. They have to manage their team a little bit differently than they do the majority of the time. because they're on the road in Houston, which is an American League team. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens tonight. We're not going to make too many predictions because many of you might even be listening to this game or listening to this podcast after the game's actually played. Yeah. But we just wanted to give our 2 cents and know that we're excited as sports fans and as baseball fans to see what happens and see if Houston can pull through for the second time in a few seasons or if the Nationals can bring it home. The one thing I wanted to kind of touch on very, very briefly is just, I know at the start of the season we talked a little bit about a bit of saga with Bryce Harper leaving to go to the Phillies. Now his former team is in the World Series, 1 win away from winning a world championship. What do you think's going through his head? Do you think there's a little bit of regret? Do you think that he might be a little bit bitter, kind of feel like he jumped ship a little bit too early? What do you think?
I think we definitely talked about this a couple months ago and about how it was going to be very cutthroat for Bryce Harper to, leave the Nationals market and go pretty close, like not go too far away from home there and join a cutthroat Philly market. And we said how important it is going to be for him to show out, especially after the monster contract he signed. And he really didn't show out. So I think there's obviously going to be a little bit of regret in his mind. His wins above replacement was a 4.2, which is pretty poor for somebody who's, getting paid as much money as he is. But at the same time, he's a dog. I think he's a clutch player, and he's obviously a good player. So despite his recent decline this year, I think he'll be able to bounce back. And I think any player that is, Silver Slugger, Rookie of the Year, MVP, All-Star, has the mentality where they don't just sit and regret, right?
No, and they want to do whatever they can to win. No. And obviously he thought that was the best idea. Yeah, the paycheck helps a lot, but it's not like he's just leaving because he hates the Nationals organization. He's leaving because he thinks that that's the best spot for him.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know. He's definitely going to have a lot of pressure to show out next season. I think he'll respond to it, but I think it'll be impossible for him to just be not jealous of the situation in Nationals. Anytime you leave a team to try and advance your career, then your team ends up going to Game 7 of the World Series, and who knows, maybe wins it tonight. You're definitely going to be sitting there going, wow, that I screwed that one up, but whatever. No, I love Bryce Harper, and regardless of how you feel about him and his attitude, I think he definitely has the chance to bounce back, so I think he'll get over this one.
For sure. All right, moving on. We'll talk a little bit about the NHL. Very early in the season, most teams have played between 10, 13 games, somewhere around there. The first thing that I want to ask about and kind of talk about a little bit is the Leafs. Hasn't been the worst start by any means, but it hasn't been the best. Do you think that they'll, sort of get on pace and find their stride, end up being a top division team like everyone expects and hopes them to be? Or do you think that they might be, kind of settling for a mid-tier placement and try to squeak their way into a spot in the playoffs?
I think they're going to figure their stuff out. If I'm being honest, it's early. They had quite a few drastic changes of the lineup, and all of them were positive changes on paper. So translating that to actual performance is a different thing. Mike Babcock definitely has his hands full, but you know what? The executives of the organization handled free agency well and got those big re-signings. So it'll be interesting to see how it is. But obviously a 6-5-3 after 14 games is not what you want. And regardless of their schedule and who they've played so far, very good Bruins teams and Capitals teams, you still need to find a way to put games together. You can't be losing to those top teams, especially if you want to win come playoffs. Which kind of leads to kind of what Ovechkin was saying, which was very blunt and very honest about how that's a great young team and a good core, which it is, but they have to do something differently.
And I can kind of see where Ovechkin's coming from. You look at an organization that is one of the most popular across North America, and they've been trying to rebuild this franchise to what used to be one of the greatest hockey teams across Canada and the United States, in the world. So obviously there's a lot of pressure on them, and yeah, they have the talent. They have a set leader in their captain now, John Tavares. That was a key part into them finding their identity. Mm-hmm. But I see what Ovechkin's saying, that they need to change something. They have one of the best coaches in the world in Babcock. They have the leadership now. They have the young talent. but it's something about their gameplay that you'll catch glimpses of them and they're really, really good. And then I remember watching the game against Montreal. They were up a couple goals and they fell apart, took selfish penalty that led to a penalty shot, and they lost it in the shootout. And that's a game that they should have won in regulation. So there is some merit to what Ovechkin's saying, that they need to act maybe a bit more mature, maybe a bit more with a chip on their shoulder. Who knows? But there does need to be some change to their gameplay.
Especially for Babcock's sake. I think if halfway through the season they're still sitting anywhere near 500, Babcock's got to go. Yeah. He's had enough opportunities, the proper players, the setup exactly how it should be, and he's just had underperforming players. And as a coach, that's literally why you make your money, is to figure out a way to. But it is early, right? Like the Sabres are 9-2-2. That's not going to end the season like that. Last year, if you're a Buffalo fan, cover your ears, because last year Sabres won 10 straight in around the fall, and they were nowhere near the playoffs come the end of the season, right? And the Lightning, they're 5-4-2 through 11 games. There's no way that they're finishing third last in the Atlantic Division. That team's way too stacked. And Luke's going to hate to hear this as well, but the Canucks are not going to finish on the pace that they are. They're 7-3-1, and there's just no chance that they're going to finish the season at that record, at any record, in any ratio like that. I'm sorry, but it's just not going to happen. So it's not. So there's a lot of chances and opportunities for them to gel. The Flames also have had a disappointing start to the season. So we'll see how everybody gels and settles into the new season. It's a long season for a reason, and we're only about an eighth of the way done, just over an eighth of the way done. So we'll have to see. I still have faith that the Leafs can get back into the playoffs and hopefully finally take out the Bruins if we get that rematch.
Fully, candid, if you will, I'd like to say that I think the Canucks are one of the most exciting teams to watch.
No.
And oh my goodness, you're such an emotional fan. I think that the Canucks, it would be very unlikely for them to do anything special this year. They have a young team. They still have pieces that they need to figure out and pieces that are missing in their lineup. But it's fun watching some superstars like Brock Besser, Elias Pettersson. They now have a captain in Bo Horvat, a boy from Southern Ontario. So they're a lot of fun. And Tim and Sid said that they are the most fun Canadian hockey team to watch. And I wouldn't be surprised. No, I don't think they'll win the Cup this year by any means. I wouldn't be surprised if they could maybe squeak into a playoff spot, though, and that'd be fun for myself and other Canucks fans, because the last time they made the playoffs, they had an early round exit after winning the President's Trophy, and the year before that, they rioted. So.
You just lost all credibility in what you said there by quoting Tim and Sid. Sid Sixero is one of the least respected, in my opinion.
Okay,
terrible opinions.
All I said.
So if he's backing up your Canucks, then they're in trouble. They're in trouble. Sid doesn't know anything, and I hope he hears this. Somebody send it to him. That guy is a hater. He's a hater, which is, I guess.
Okay. Anyways, other surprise teams. We mentioned Buffalo a little bit. Edmonton. Both of those teams off to good starts after not really having great seasons the past few seasons, despite their high lottery picks year after year. It would be nice to kind of see those franchises turn it around a little bit. We see the Capitals and the Bruins. That's kind of expected. Those teams playing really well. The Avalanche at Colorado, they've been impressing me as well. And they're leading the Central Division in the Western Conference right now.
I'm happy for you. They've been impressing you. I'm happy for you.
You're the most ridiculous.
They're unimpressive to me.
I don't know why I do a podcast with you, man. Like this.
First of all, I'm letting you do a podcast with me.
No,
I'm kidding. The Avalanche are unbelievable. We'll have to see what happens. It's still really early, but we'll see how the Leafs settle in, I guess.
See how the Canucks make out. And away we go. Good. Another season that has just started is the NBA regular season. About 3, 4, 5 games in for most teams. It's tough to kind of pull out any trends so far. Obviously, you can look at the teams that haven't won a game yet, like the Pacers or the Pelicans, the Kings, which is actually kind of surprising in my opinion. The Pelicans and the Kings have good young talent, namely the Kings. I would have expected the Kings to be doing a little bit better, but they'll find their identity. But the one thing that we did want to talk about is this an end of an era for the Golden State Warriors?
No. Like, yes and no. It depends on how you're going to define that. Are they going to be the dominant team that they were for the last 4 or 5 years? No. And that's obvious because all good things must come to an end. And when you are a dynasty like that, you just cannot sustain that. It's not possible. Kevin Durant, obviously, leaving to the Nets is a topic of discussion. But you also have to factor in that Klay Thompson hasn't been playing yet. And with the likes of D'Angelo Russell being new on the starting lineup and a lot of turnover on that starting lineup, they need to take time to figure their stuff out. It's not going to happen overnight, but that's always going to be a team where with somebody like Steph Curry in the lineup and people as experienced as Draymond Green in the lineup and then young star power of D'Angelo Russell, that team's always going to be good. They just need time to settle in. Getting blown out by 30 to a very, very weak Thunder team is a bit embarrassing, but I think that they still need to figure their stuff out, as Draymond Green said. You know what? If people want to paint them in the picture that they're going to be bad, I think that they've got another thing coming to them later on the season. They're gonna come back and they're just gonna be their Golden State team. But I don't think they're ever gonna get back to that.
The caliber that lost 9 games.
Yeah, that caliber, because that caliber is like once in every 35, 40 years caliber.
You look at like the Bulls when Jordan played for them. You look at the Warriors a few years ago, and a lot of people make comparisons to them, and they talk about other teams being classified as these super teams. Do you think that the sort of trend is going away from having these super teams that you load up with 3+ all-stars, and instead you have 2 superstars and try to build a core around that? Like you look at the Lakers, you have LeBron James,
AD obviously,
AD right now, Anthony Davis, and then you look at Golden State. You could argue that Steph and take one of their other players, Klay Thompson, if you will, D'Angelo Russell, whoever.
Big 3 there, yeah.
Do you think that the league is sort of naturally balancing itself out?
I don't think so. I think this season it is, and it's really cool. This is going to be a really fun season to watch. There's going to be lots of parity in the Eastern and Western conferences. But I don't think that the NBA will ever really go away from that trend. I think as long as there's going to be free agents who haven't won a championship, for instance, they're going to force the upper management to bring another superstar over, which is interesting. Obviously, with the falling out of the NBA and the whole China situation, there could be a big reduction in the salary cap. So whether that actually affects the super team because there's literally less money to give players, that would be interesting. I don't love the super teams. I'm much more like what we've got right now with Russell Westbrook and James Harden and Kristaps Porzingis and Luka Doncic. That's going to be a problem. That team's going to be a big, big, big problem. And but I don't know. I like this. I like this dynamic duo type of setup that they have going on right now. So I don't think it'll ever really shift away from that era. But at least this season, we're kind of seeing a lot more parity. It's a wide open field this year.
Yeah, and I like that because I think that you could really see maybe an 8 upside, a 1 in the playoffs, or even a 2 and a 7. You could see upsets there, that you wouldn't really expect to see,
and we haven't seen really.
Yeah, in the past, because typically it's the higher seed ends up winning, but there'll be a small margin between the 1 seed and the 8 seed after the regular season and on the court as well. So yeah, the NBA, yes, it's still really early. It's a long season, 82 games. However, I'm really liking what this season has in store, and it should be a fun one.
Absolutely. We're now through week 8 of the NFL. Browns have been disappointing. 49ers are 7-0. That surprised a lot of people. A lot of pundits picked the 49ers to go 3, 4, 5 wins max this season. They're already at 7. Not a loss. Their defense has been unbelievable with the likes of Nick Bosa. Holy smokes. And also Jimmy Garoppolo is balling out for the 49ers. Patriots are 8-0, Luke. What do you think?
I'm not, being honest, I'm not the biggest football fan. I've watched one game, and it was the Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs. And I watched that game because I had bet money on it. So, yeah, no,
Well, if you had to make a pick then, since you're not a pundit, who do you have at least in the Super Bowl? And who do you have coming out of the Super Bowl?
I think that I would take the Chiefs out of the AFC because Patrick Mahomes is very good. He's looked good, and he can really be that quarterback of the offense, and he can, everything does truly flow through him as it should.
Hopefully he can stay healthy.
As long as he can make sure that he's actually on the field.
Taking snaps, yep.
And it would be nice. Yeah, I have total respect for the Patriots and for Tom Brady and the successes that he's had. But it'd be nice to see someone other than the Patriots come out of the AFC. From the NFC, I like the Packers a lot. The team dynamic that they have there and sort of the mantra that they've built up over the years, being a sort of a community-run team. It's kind of neat what they have going there in Wisconsin. And yeah, I would love to see Green Bay come out of the NFC.
Fair enough. Russell Wilson, back to his old ways. MVP-esque season for sure. Seahawks are 6-2-0. I love to see them balling. Deshaun Watson is also showing out for his Texans. They're 5-3-0. They could be a lot better than that right now. If you are going to bet on the spread for the rest of the season, a point spread, please do not bet on the game if Oakland is involved. Oakland has been Derek Carr has been slinging when you don't want him to be, and then when you want him to be, the team kind of falls apart, as they should. That's not a stacked team. So there's a little warning if you're going to continue betting. I think I'm 0 for 5 on point spread when Derek Carr and the Raiders are involved in the equation, so I'm going to have to put that away. But in terms of my prediction, Lukey, I've got definitely the Patriots and the Packers. I think the Patriots are just too dominant. Right now, their defense has more interceptions than they've allowed thrown touchdowns. Absolutely ridiculous. Tom Brady's obviously going to be a GOAT always. But if you look at his quality of play compared to Aaron Rodgers this season, Aaron Rodgers has been making just absolutely ridiculous completions. He's putting up monster yardage every game. And I think that the Packers are going to get out of the NFC with the Patriots getting out of the AFC, and I think the Packers are going to pull it off. I think it's time for Aaron Rodgers to finally get his ring, and people can start giving that guy some respect. So, yeah, that's who I've got, definitely.
Yeah, again, we're trucking along through the season, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens late next winter, early next spring on Super Bowl Sunday. Moving on, one of our favorite topics that we'll briefly touch upon to wrap things up is the start of the NCAA basketball season. Both Lucas and I, big NCAA basketball fans. Next Tuesday,
it's our favorite time.
The season kicks off with the Champions Classic, where Duke, Kansas, Michigan State, and Kentucky all meet up at a common location. They play a doubleheader. This year, those 4 teams are seeded 1 through 4, and it'll be a really fun, exciting kickoff to the season. One question that I had is, do you think that this is something that coaches and players embrace, playing some of the other best teams in the country first game of the season, or do you think that this is sort of a ploy by the NCAA to try to bring in revenue, sell tickets at really high expensive prices, and make a profit off of this?
I don't see anything wrong with it. Just kind of a kickoff to start off the season. I think obviously the NCAA is an organization that's always going to be just trying to maximize profits. That's just how they're built. Speaking of which, actually pretty cool that now NCAA players can profit off of their name. That's really cool. Hopefully we can see the NCAA football games come back, and maybe even NCAA basketball games on like Xbox and PS4. That would be really cool. Yeah. But apart from that though, it's I don't think it's like a problem. Obviously, if you're worried about injuries and load management, it's only a 30-plus game season, so that's never going to be too big of a problem so long as everybody's coming in and is taking proper care of their bodies. So I think it's just kind of an exciting way. People wait a long time. I know you and I wait a long time for college basketball to come back. So for opening weekend or next Wednesday to kind of kick off with some of the best teams in the country and top 10 in preseason polls, that's exciting to me.
Yeah, I like it a lot too, and a lot of those coaches, they have the mentality that you need to beat the best to be the best, and if you're not able to do it at the start of the season, then that gives you all the more drive to do it in the tournament in March. And if you are, then great, use that, build off it, and use that for the foundation for a really good, successful season. Looking a little bit at the preseason rankings, Lucas and I have mentioned previously on the show that the ACC is kind of seen as the gauntlet or the powerhouse conference. There's typically really good names. Historically, there's been Duke, UNC, UVA, Virginia, of course, Louisville, Florida State, Notre Dame. So a lot of good teams right there. This year, we only see 4 of them ranked in the top 25. Duke's ranked number 4, Louisville at 5, UNC at 9, and Virginia at 11. Do you think that the ACC is losing that status as the strongest conference, or do you think that it'll still shape out and still turn out to be the gauntlet?
I think the ACC, for the foreseeable future, will stay as the prime conference. I think as any sport is, it's cyclical in nature, especially when you have 3 ACC teams getting 1 seeds in the tournament last year. And then you've got the North Carolina, which is the legacy of Michael Jordan and Roy Williams and arguably the best college coach of all time, and Duke, and so many prolific NBA players coming out of obviously the brotherhood there, and with the likes of Tony Bennett, another one of the greatest coaches.
ACC Coach of the Year last year.
Incredible. So I don't think it'll ever shift away from the ACC. I think that sometimes conferences such as the SEC or the Big Ten can get close to it. And obviously this season there's only 4 in the top 25, but if you think back to last year, how many ACC teams were actually in the top 25 preseason? And you know how many actually showed out into the ACC tournament? I think that the ACC is always just going to be super competitive, regardless. So I don't see it going anywhere for their kind of their premium status as the best conference in college basketball. But,
for sure.
Yeah.
Couple comments. Top freshman of the year going into the season. Notably, Cole Anthony at UNC, the point guard. Comments on him, Lucas. I know you're a big fan, and he has a lot of talent.
Here's the thing. Cole Anthony is going to be the most productive freshman in college basketball this season. It's without a doubt. He's a high-volume scorer. He's uber competitive, and he's going to be just the power, the offense, the go-to guy, the filter of that North Carolina team who always finds a way to be very dominant, all biases aside. Preseason closed gym scrimmage against Villanova. They win 104-100. Cole Anthony has 28 points. That's preseason, but he's just going to be good. And when you throw, guys like Armando Bacot, who's also a top 12 pick prospect coming into this year, and then you've got really quality transfer students like Christian Keeling coming in. And then you've got the experience of Garrison Brooks. I think that team's going to be very good, and I think it's going to be all based around Cole Anthony. Having said that, what is the most exciting team in the country, do you think, starting the season?
I need to go with Michigan State.
How could you not?
The Spartans, they're ranked number 1 preseason for a reason. They have, in my opinion, the best point guard in the country.
Right.
You have senior Cassius Winston. He's
ridiculous.
You could argue he single-handedly eliminated Duke in the March Madness tournament last year. He's a force to be reckoned with. They have incredible coaching in Tom Izzo.
Josh Langford is back. Xavier Tillman, Foster Lawyer, Gabe Brown, Kyle Ahrens. Like, that team is coming back.
They're good.
They lost 3 players in Matt McQuaid, Kenny Goins, and Nick Ward. Like, they lost 3 players from a team that definitely could have been in the finals.
9 or 10 that could have played in a national championship.
Yeah.
And it's exciting too because this year they changed up the format a little bit of the ACC Big Ten Challenge. So first weekend of the season, Michigan State will play Kentucky and Duke will play Kansas. So those are big blockbuster matchups. But then Duke and Michigan State will play each other in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. So that'll be another, top 5, maybe top 10, top 5 matchup, depending on where they're seated at the time. So they have a really, tough non-conference schedule and a couple big opponents to play against, and it'll be really fun watching them play.
No, 100%. Can you choose a team that you think is going to be the biggest surprise of the season?
Kind of, maybe not the biggest surprise. I think, two of the top 10 recruits in the country are James Wiseman, who went to Memphis, and Isaiah Stewart, who went to Washington at Combo Garden, a big man respectively. I think it's interesting that you see prospects that are that high up in the rankings, and they go to universities that aren't really known for being powerhouses in the college basketball loop. So it'd be kind of neat to see a team that's typically not a top tier team, maybe find themselves as a 3, maybe a 2 seed come time for tournament rankings. A lot of people betting on Louisville this year. They're known for their early exits from the tournament, but Jordan Nwora is back.
The Buffalo native.
And they're going to have a good team. I like Michigan all the time. Michigan always has a good program. Last year they beat Michigan State head-to-head in their season series. So, there's lots that's different about this season, kind of taking away from the power conferences and distributing which teams could be in contention for decent seeds come the tournament. How about you?
I'm going to have to go with probably like the I don't know. I love to see Florida show out. Florida, it's been a while since they've been really dominant, but it's good to see, what a tight core there, and lots of consensus ratings have them in the top 10 with, Noah Locke, Andrew Nembhard, kind of rounding off the list of who's coming back. And then you've got the likes of Kerry Blackshear Jr., Scotty Lewis coming in. That is going to be a good team. Gonzaga is always going to compete, but also Maryland, I think, is going to be a very good squad with Anthony Cowan, Jalen Smith, and Cyril Smith Jr. I think that's a very good squad as well. I think the most disappointing this year definitely is going to be Memphis. I mean, it's tough. It depends on how you define disappointing. They have a very, very good recruiting class coming in, but we've seen with Duke a lot that has the number one class for a while that does not always translate to the tournament. Definitely does not translate to the tournament compared to the regular season, just because it's all about experience and leadership and everything like that. So despite their very, very good James Wiseman, Precious Achua, Boogie Ellis, Malcolm Dandridge, that is a very, very good team. So we'll have to see, but I don't think they're going to show it like a lot of people want them to.
I think another dilemma we should talk about is Gonzaga. Lucas and I, we have our opinions on Gonzaga. They're in a very, very weak conference. People have them still sitting in the top 10, top 15, fluctuating around there preseason. I just can't see them being that good. They lost Hachimura. They lost
Brandon
Clark, Perkins, Norvell, Jeremy Jones. They only have 3 players who played a key role in the team.
Also lost Gino Crandall. Oh my goodness. They've got Admin Gilder coming in, Drew Timmy. Gonzaga is always going to be a team that's going to be in the tournament every single year because they're playing
because
on
they
the
go
West
basically
Coast
undefeated in the West Coast Conference.
Yeah, but but they also typically do well in the tournament. At least they're usually in the discussion, at least for an Elite Eight appearance. This year we'll have to see. They lost quite a bit off. There's a lot of question marks about who you're going to be able to trust going down the line. There's enough talent here to make a run at being a top 10 team, Lukey, but it all depends on how it kind of formulates. And it would be really, really silly for the committee to throw them in top 10 consistently week after week in the AP poll when they have lost so much and they're in a weak conference. But we'll have to see come March how they compete against good teams, since they play maybe 1, max 2 out-of-conference games against top 10 opponents every year, and they typically lose half of them. So we'll have to see what happens, I guess. I'm not high on Gonzaga this year at all, though.
No. If there was one team, I know it's way too early to tell and basically impossible to tell. If you had to put your finger on one team to be cutting the nets down in Atlanta,
oh my God,
who would you pick?
Wow, that is way too early. Everybody wants to say Michigan State, and I feel like a lot of the time the preseason number 1 ranked team is the team with the best recruiting class, but this year it's a good recruiting class mixed with just an incredible returning cast. I think Michigan State will be in the Final Four. And I think, but I don't know if I can pick who I think's gonna. I'm always gonna have to go high on my heels, so I'm gonna just go with UNC.
Oh my goodness.
Well, it's way too early. It's just way too early. There's so many things that could happen, and I'm always gonna have to support Chapel Hill. So I'm gonna have North Carolina cutting down the nets in March.
All right. We all know that I'm a big Duke fan. Duke has a nice recruiting class this year, not near as good as it's been in previous seasons. I think one team that I'm going to have to go with, and it kind of hurts me to say this because I'm not a huge fan of them, but I'm going to say Kentucky. They haven't won a national championship in a number of years. They've been close. They had a season in 2015 where they didn't lose a game until the national championship semifinals. They have a really good recruiting class this year. There's a reason that they're in the top 4 preseason.
Khalil Whitney and Tyrese Maxey will be a problem.
And
It will be a problem.
I'm really liking the look of them. They have Coach Calipari. The Wildcats are looking good going into the season. So if I was to put a finger on one team, I'd say Kentucky. Obviously, I'll be cheering for Duke the entire way. But
that's fair. No, that's a good pick.
Yeah. Anyways, I think that basically wraps it up. If you guys have any comments, concerns, questions, you want to be featured on the show, shoot an email to the email in our description. I believe it's lsstartinglineup@gmail.com. Thank you for sticking with us. We'll be back releasing an episode weekly, and we're looking forward to the official start of season 1. So thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, guys.